On today's episode of Locked On Wild, if the Wild need to make a free agent acquisition on the cheap, here are three names that would do.
Hey, this is Matt Boldy, and you're listening to Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day, and we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day as well. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we went to the free agent market and tried to come up with a few names for the Wild to consider that would not cost them a heck of a lot. We'll take a look at a few career year opportunities and whether or not we believe that those particular players can continue to build off of that success. My name is Seth Toupal, host of Locked On Wild and host of Seth on Sports, credentialed media member. And we've spent a lot of time taking a look at potential trade opportunities. And I know one of the big areas that many fans would like to see avoided is a big budget free agent acquisition. And I tend to agree. You are just coming off of a couple of contracts that really tied you down. The last thing you want to do is go right back in that direction. So we are doing what I like to call bargain hunting. Anybody that is a thrifty shopper has done this, where you may go to, garage sales. You may go to a clearance store to try to find what you're looking for and save a few bucks doing it. There's nothing wrong with it. And with some of the prices that will be thrown out on the market, it's probably the best way to approach things. So let's set up the parameters. Now, these players that I am looking at can be both centers and wings. And I'm also doing this with the assumption that the Wild make another move. So this would not be like your headline move of the offseason. I'm assuming that the Wild have already made that move and that these are players that they can come back to kind of help fill out the roster and, just add depth and versatility to this lineup. The first that I wanted to start with is Morgan Geeky of the Boston Bruins. He fits a few different things that I think Bill Guerin would appreciate. Number one, he's 6'3", but he is 26, and he's coming off of a season in which he scored 33 goals. 33 goals in 77 games. And he made a whopping $2 million with the Boston Bruins this past season. Now, coming off of a 33-goal year, it would stand to reason that he's going to get a little bit of a bump in the salary department with whoever he does sign for. But the appealing parts, 26 years old, he's got the size component. And just looking at some of the numbers that he put together with the Boston Bruins over the last 2 years, he scored 50 goals in 153 total games with the Bruins over the last two seasons. He had 96 points in 153 games with the Boston Bruins over the past two seasons. And he played just under 17 minutes per night this past season. So, you're talking like a third, maybe a second line role with a Bruins team that was pretty bad all year. But 33 goals I like, 150 shots on goal. And I like to always do this when we are talking about players or free agent acquisitions that would be coming into the roster, is just look at where their production would have slotted them in on the roster. And if you take Geeky's 150 shots on goal, that would have put Geeky in 4th on the team, just above Kirill Kaprizov with 150 shots on goal. His total shot attempts this past season, 307. That would have put him 3rd. So he's not afraid to shoot the puck. He 22% shooting percentage that is a high number. But even if you look at what he did as a 25-year-old in the 2023-2024 season, he had 17 goals in 76 games on 130 shots on goal. So even then he shot 13%. His career shooting percentage is 14.6. So just looking at the law of averages, if you sign him to a 1-year deal, you're probably not going to get 33 goals again. But he could provide a scoring depth component to your lineup. Now, he has bounced around. That's fair to question with Morgan Geeky at this point. He started his career with Carolina, spent 2 years there. Then he went to Seattle, spent 2 years there. Now he's with Boston. So 3 teams in 6 years is certainly worth looking into. Other things that he brings to the table. He won faceoffs at a 46.3% clip this past season. Now he took under 400 faceoffs on the season, so it's not like he had a ton. But we'll take a look at where he's slotted into the lineup as well. That will explain a little bit of that. 29 block shots in 77 games, 110 hits, and just looking at some of the other numbers that Geeky brings to the table. He had 5.5 offensive point shares this past season. If you add that in with where the Minnesota Wilds were at, that would have put him tied with Matt Boldy for 2nd on the team. So point of reference there is that he certainly had an impact offensively. Defensively, he had 1.7 defensive point shares this season. That would have ranked 4th, tied for 4th with Matt Zuccarello amongst forwards on the team. So he's not just a one-trick player. He can give you a little offense or a little defense as well. As far as the special teams units go, Geeky had this past season, he had 4 power play goals. He had 5 power play assists. So he's not a top power play guy, but you could work him into maybe a second power play role with a little time there. And as far as the penalty kill goes for the Boston Bruins, which special teams wise they weren't great, but did at least get some time on those units. So as far as the penalty kill goes, Geeky was not as big of a factor on the penalty kill as he was on the power play. In fact, he hardly played on the penalty kill. He got roughly 2 minutes per game on the power play, so he can help you there. The one area to point to is the faceoffs, 46.3%. It's not great, but just looking at the lineup that the Bruins used at the end of the season, he was playing top line minutes with Pavel Zacha and David Pastrnak. So he was playing high. He was playing up in the lineup for them. So he could be, if you're looking for kind of a shrewd potential add to the top 6, depending on what the Wild do to impact that top 6, he may not be bad to consider for that spot. But I think a player like Geeky is going to want is going to want a little bit of security. He just came off of a career year, 33 goals. So he's going to want a 2 or a 3 year deal or for wherever he heads. And that may be a little too rich for the Minnesota Wild. You don't want to, I don't know if you want to lock into something like that. Now, again, he's 26. So it's not like you're making a decision on a guy that's 33, 34 years old. He's 26. Could he be like a 20, 25 goal a season guy as he gets more and more time in the NHL? The other thing to consider is that he has played a total of 4 full seasons at the NHL level. He played in 36 games with Carolina as a 22-year-old. Since then, 73, 69, 76, and 77 games. So he's still kind of figuring out his game as well at the NHL level. So could be a very intriguing, kind of shrewd free agent signing around 3.5, somewhere around that. And I think that would be doable. But again, the question that I raise is he's likely going to want a multi-year deal, which is that could probably price the Wild out on him. I still would be intrigued, but we have a couple of other names to get to here today, including a name from the Vancouver Canucks, who has been in the midst of a career season himself. We'll talk about Pius Suter as we continue today's episode of Locked On Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by Wonderful Pistachios. Are you looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they are packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. I call them my guilt-free snack because I know if I'm sitting on the couch like I will be tonight watching the Stanley Cup final, I can have 1, 2, 3 handfuls and not have to worry about my calorie intake or anything along those lines, because you're getting a jam-packed dose of fiber right into your system. So get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, a reminder, had to postpone the live show last night. We had some very nasty weather moving through the area here in where I'm at. So ended up having to do some coverage of that. So we're doing it tonight, 8 p.m. It's the show that everybody tunes in, the most popular show on Locked On Wild throughout the course of the week. Denny has trade scenarios that we are going to go through and a monumental celebration as well to be had on tonight's episode, 8 p.m. Make sure to hop back on YouTube here for the show. So we're looking at bargain bin free agents to take a look at here for the Minnesota Wild. Again, this is assuming that they make a big splash or get some sort of resolution in the Marco Rossi situation to where maybe you do get a player back in return that you factor into the top 6, and maybe you just need one more piece to put up there, but funds are a little limited. You're not looking to make a huge major commitment. 1-year deal, or maybe 1 or 2 with these particular players could be something to take a look at. Pius Suter of the Vancouver Canucks, 28 years old. He's 5'11", and all told has played 364 games at the NHL level. He's got 82 goals, 80 assists, 162 points in three stops. Started with Chicago as a 24-year-old. Then he went to Detroit for 2 years. Then Vancouver for the last 2 years. And this past season, career highs basically across the board. Career high in goals with 25. Career high tying assists, 21. Career high in points, 46. Career high tying 2 power play goals, 3 power play assists. Career high in ice time. Career high in second best season, I should say, in shots on goal and total shot attempts. He had almost 900 faceoffs as well, 43 blocks, 59 hits, and received Selke Trophy votes as well. So that speaks a little bit to the defense that he brings to the table. And let's go right to that spot. Suter, all told, 3 offensive point shares, 2 defensive point shares for a total of 5.1 point shares this past season with Vancouver. Again, let's take a peek at where that puts him amongst the Minnesota Wild players. The 2 defensive point shares would put him second amongst forwards defensively behind Matt Boldy. The 3 offensive point shares, that would put him fifth behind Matt Zuccarello and just ahead of Jared Spurgeon. So, decently productive player on both sides of the ice. And the things I like, the 25 goals. But looking at a few of the other pieces to this, took almost 900 faceoffs, 42.7%. That was by far his career low. Last year was just under 50 in 67 games, but this year getting a chance to really be part of the Vancouver lineup full time. It just was not able to consistently win those draws. Now, I know Elias Pettersson got shut down at the end of the season. Pius Suter was the number 1 center for the Vancouver Canucks in the final game of the year that they played. Doesn't mean that he profiles as a top line center. It's just an interesting point to note here. But I like that if you take his 82 game average, he's about an 18 goal scorer per season. The 36 points, that's a little on the low side, but he seems like kind of a Bill Guerin type player, defense oriented, got a little sandpaper to him, but he can also contribute in the goals department as well. My question with Suter, who, by the way, made this past season $1.6 million. So he's 29, so he's still on the right side of 30. He's capable of giving you 15 goals per season. It just, to me, this seems a little bit too much like some of what you already have. Like, is there a big difference between Pius Suter and Ryan Hartman at this point? Maybe in the penalty minutes department, and Suter had just 18 penalty minutes in 81 games. So maybe there's not a big difference, but I'm talking about these guys that, can play center, can play wing, can get you about 15, 20 goals. I feel like he would be a little bit too similar to what the Minnesota Wild have on the table already. Now, the fact that he's gotten Selke votes speaks to the defense that he brings to the table. So I think that part would be appealing for the Minnesota Wild. But I think he would probably be somebody that you'd slot more into the third line. I just don't think you need that right now. So I would say of the two, I'd be interested in Geeky for sure. I'd probably pass on Pius Suter. Now, if you're going to slot him in as a center, again, does he really do enough to be a 2C on a deep team? Probably not. So this would be one that I'd categorize as I would be perfectly fine if somebody else spent that money. So Geeky is a yes. I'm going to say probably a no on Pius Suter, even though the price point is very appealing. One final name to discuss, and he was a piece on the Carolina Hurricanes team that once again just could not crack the Florida Panthers, but still had a great season himself. We'll talk about Jack Roslovic as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Again, a reminder, make sure to tune in for the most popular show on the Locked on Wild channel every week. The live show here tonight at 8 p.m. Denny has some great things planned. 8 o'clock tonight, right here on YouTube. Again, we know you'll tune in because it's the one everybody tunes into throughout the course of the week. So make sure to join us at 8. One final name to discuss via the bargain bins. And another name that I think I threw in because I didn't really know a ton about him, but he's another player that has bounced around to a few different spots. That's Jack Roslovic. Roslovic is 28 years old. He is 6'1", and all told, he has played a total of 526 NHL games with 102 goals, 158 assists for a grand total of 260 points in 526 games. Started his career with Winnipeg, played there for 4 seasons, then went to Columbus, was traded to the New York Rangers, and was with the Carolina Hurricanes this past season. So 4 teams on the Roslovic ledger. And this past year, tied his career high in goals with 22. He had 17 assists, 39 points, which is slightly below his 82-game average. But a lot of even strength scoring, just 1 power play goal and 1 power play assist. So he's not really going to help you a ton in the power play department. He won faceoffs at a 54.1% clip this past season, albeit minimal attempts, right around 300. But Roslovic, I think, is entertaining as well. He was in their most recent game was not in the lineup for the Hurricanes, but he did factor in, played in 81 games this past season for Carolina, and made a grand total on his 1-year contract. He made a grand total of $2.8 million. So again, under 3, pretty reasonable. And for Roslovic, this again is one that I don't know that I would be super I don't know that I would be super amped about, because it just feels like he kind of represents a lot of what you already have and just would continue to add to that level of confusion. He played just under 14 minutes per night on the ice, 139 shots on goal. He shot 15.8%, which was above his career average. As far as the point shares go, 3 offensive point shares, 3.9 or 0.9 defensive point shares for a grand total of 3.9. That was his highest number since 2021, 2022. And that would rank amongst Minnesota Wild players. The 3 offensive point shares would again be just behind Matt Zuccarello for 5th. The 0.9 defensive point shares would be a ways down the leaderboard. That would be just behind Ryan Hartman for 18th on the team. And the total of 3.9 would be ninth, just ahead of Freddie Gaudreau. Roslovic, I think, just represents, again, a lot of what you already have on the roster. And if you're going to have somebody playing that is going to give you, it would be one thing if he was able to give you a pretty steady 20 goals, but not only have there been injury concerns, he also has only exceeded 20 goals twice. And last season, with two teams, he had 9 goals in 59 games. And a 30, 40 point guy is fine for lower in the lineup. That doesn't really solve the issues of needing game breakers in the top part of the lineup. So I would probably pass on Roslovic again. Just feels like it's a little too close to what you already have. So I guess in looking at these three names, and I like to kind of do these, I call it like a blind reaction. I like to just dive in without doing, a huge amount of looking beforehand so that we can just react together to particular players. I'd be pretty intrigued by Morgan Geeky on a short-term deal to add to the mix. Again, provided that the team makes some sort of acquisition at the top end. That can't be your A move. Like that can't be, hey, we added a Morgan Geeky to the roster, and that's what you're going to get for the offseason. That can't be the only thing that you do. But bringing him in as a piece would be intriguing to add to the mix. The 33 goals on a pretty bad Boston team, that intrigues me. And the ability to play a little center. He's physical. I think he has a lot of traits to him that would make him an appealing target for the Minnesota Wild as it is. So do you go 3 there, 3.5 to make that happen? Maybe. You certainly could. But I will also counter with what I feel like is going to be something to keep an eye on here as this offseason goes as well, is let's say you do add Geeky to the mix. Does somebody get subtracted off the roster? Do we see somebody moved to clear up a spot, not only for him, but a little competition amongst the rest of the roster? Because as it stands right now, even if you don't put Marco Rossi in the equation, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 forwards on this roster right now. That does not include Danila Yurov. That does include Liam Ogren. And that does not include Marco Rossi. So you, as of right now, if you just run it back with everything that you have and add Danila Yurov to the mix, there's your 12 right there, assuming that Liam Ogren makes the team. Are you really going to do that? Are you going to approach this season in that manner? And that does not factor in an acquisition as well. That does not factor in Marco Rossi potentially staying. It feels like there might be somebody that gets walked off the plank. And I will say too, this is where that Marcus Johansson 800K is important to keep an eye on. 800K is pretty low on the scale from a salary perspective. And with the Wild no longer having to penny pinch, you could cut that pretty easily. You could cut that contract and it would not it wouldn't hamper you hardly at all. If you, even if you like, let's just say it gets to the buyout portion or the buyout potential, it'd be $266K on your books next year. $266,000 would be on your books next year if it got to that. That's a very doable scenario. So I'm just thinking out loud here. Is I kind of wonder if somebody gets swept off this roster before the season gets done, or before during the off season, before the season gets going in October. Something to keep an eye on. But I would, of those three names, I'm glad I kind of talked myself out of two of them, by the way. Geeky's intriguing. Morgan Geeky's intriguing as an add to this roster. You know, the Wild have had success. They had success with Declan Chisholm as kind of a young guy that in his case, he didn't really have an opportunity in Winnipeg. So he was claimed off waivers and added in, and he's done pretty good in spot situations. Feels like Geeky maybe could be a similar one in that vein, but you do also have to kind of buyer beware of a guy that just puts a career year together and kind of falls off the face of the earth after that. So let me know in the comments, yay or nay on, again, contingent on other moves being made, Morgan Geeky as a potential extremely buy low candidate for a roster spot. I'm talking 1-year deal, contingent on other moves. Let me know what you think in the comments section. I talked myself out of Suter and Roslovic, so we're not going to factor those guys in at all. That'll do it for today's episode of Locked On Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure to join us tonight for the live show at 8 p.m. over on YouTube. And make sure to subscribe, not only on YouTube, but on your favorite podcast platforms as well. We have you covered each and every day of the week with new episodes right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team each and every day.